$55 from an anonymous donor for the splash pad, and then $300 from Brian Wilk for playoff basketball DJ, and then automotive training equipment from the Ford Automotive Care Exploration Program, the ACE program, for automotive training in the Ford ACE program. So we thank those individuals and entities for their donations to the Oregon School District. All right, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar. All right, we have a motion. Is there a second? All right, we have a motion and a second for the consent calendar. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Okay, we are now moving into B, information items, public comment, and we do have people registered for public comment, so I'm going to read the following parameters. District Policy 180.05 provides an opportunity for the public to address the board. We value the public comment period and feedback from our stakeholders. To comply with open meetings law and to ensure consistency, public comment will have the following parameters. Public comment is scheduled for 15 minutes. This time period may be expanded up to no more than 1 hour at the discretion of the president. Mr. Weiland will signal the speaker when their time is up. So when there's 30 seconds left, he will raise the yellow, and when time is up, he will raise the red. The board will not comment after each speaker and will reserve discussion to any items on the agenda, and speakers are welcome to stay for the meeting. Next steps following public comment may include referral to the appropriate administrator for follow-up with the speaker or placement of the matter on a future board agenda. Okay, so when I call your name, please come up to the table. There's a microphone, and you will say your name and your address, and then you'll have 30 minutes on the floor. Or, sorry, 3 minutes to make your comment. Wow, everybody needs to expand their comments. Okay, so first up is Audra. So Audra, if you come up, say your name and your address, and then the floor is yours for 3 minutes.
All right, sounds good. Good evening. My name is Audra Hoy-Champson. I live at 369 Oakmont Street. I have been a mentor in the Oregon School District for 3 years. I am a former member of the Wisconsin Chamber Orchestra, current board member of Children's Theater of Medicine, and I volunteer backstage in the Oregon High School Theater Department. My passion for the arts and the mental health of our youth is very strong. Most importantly, though, my role is that of a parent of a middle schooler at Oregon Middle School. I'm here today to speak on the power of music and its impact in the curriculum across the board. It affects all subjects, and it also affects our kids' mental health. Excuse me. I see the impact of the arts in my daughter, in her friends, and the kids I work with backstage. It lights them up. They talk about school. They talk about their subjects. It is something that perforates through everything they do. I don't think, though, we talk how it directly affects the subjects that they study. According to a study released in Neuropsychologia in May 2015, music can be considered the equivalent of language and also consists of discrete elements and specific roles. In fact, it has been shown that language and music share brain circuits, thus excluding the theory that there's two independent areas, the right hemisphere for music and the left hemisphere for language. I have seen this specifically in our home. Spanish and English are our daughter's strongest subjects, and I have little doubt that it is because she studies music through orchestra, choir, and the performing arts. The Oregon School District is well regarded for its music program, and this is without our educators having the full resources that they have been asking for. Imagine the impacts our students could have if they had those resources and invested in this, not only the school, so not only their studies, but also the student as a whole person. As parents, we ask that you put in the effort to ensure that our teachers have the resources they've been asking for years to accommodate enrollment when deciding staffing within the Oregon School District. The students are the ones who suffer when their small group sessions are decreased by 50%. The staffing requested by OSD is a benefit to the students, by the OSD staff is a benefit to the students, and shows the arts that the arts has as an academic subject in Oregon.
All right, thank you. Next up is Charlie. If you go ahead and state your full name and your address, and then 3 minutes are yours.
Hi, my name is Charlie Hoy. I live at 369 Oakmont Street. I am a 7th grader at Oregon Middle School. I feel that I have benefited very greatly from my experiences in the music classes offered in the Oregon School District since I moved here 5 years ago. Since I take orchestra and choir, they change between orange and black days, and I have a small group for orchestra every single week. But I only have a small group for choir every other week, and I feel like I fall behind with my choir since I do not have a weekly opportunity to get a small group and experience with my teacher since she has split her time between RCI and OMS. I ask that the school board supports our teachers' requests in their budgeting and staffing, and music helps me in my other subjects, and I know it does my friends as well very greatly. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up is it Brady? Okay. Come on up, Brady.
Hi, I'm Brady Greiber, and I live at 333 Oakmont Street. I'm currently enrolled in 8th grade choir, and I've been in choir since 3rd grade. I'm here tonight to ask you to continue to do all you can in supporting music education at our school district. I believe it's important for all kids to have music classes, as it can be a great chance for them to express themselves, to find others with alike interests, and connect with a great musical teacher. One great way to do this is through small group learning. This gives the student and the teacher an opportunity to learn more about the opposite person, build a relationship with them, as well as give more learning time directed to their specific musical part. As a 7th grader, I had the opportunity to have a small group every week. This year, as an 8th grader, I got the opportunity to have a small group every other week, unlike orchestra and band students who continue to have small groups every week. Learning music in school has helped me sight read for auditions, learn note names in solfege, count new rhythms, and much more. Music has also helped me deal with my emotions. When I feel happy, I listen to happy music that uplifts me, and when I'm sad, I listen to sad music that can help me get through that emotion. And I explore new emotions every time I listen to new music. When I feel an emotion, I listen to music and I find new songs that make me feel that emotion, so that next time I feel that emotion, I can listen through music to help me get through it. In most of our choir pieces, we have 3 parts, and we learn how to make those parts sound equal and blend together. Working on creating a choral sound has helped me understand how to be a better group member outside of choir, because it shows me that every voice is important, and even in a group, rather than just one person singing alone. In a group, it's important to let everyone be heard and make sure they feel just as important as everyone else in the group. Over the weekend, I competed at Solo and Ensemble Festival in Verona, and I had a great experience growing outside of my comfort zone and performing under pressure. These are just some of the examples of how choir is a critical part of a well-rounded academic education, where I have the opportunity to do what I love and where I feel like I belong. Thank you for your time and considering making additions and changes so that me and many other kids can receive the best possible academic experience.
All right, thank you. Next up is Maya.
Hi, my name is Maya Doucette. I live at 470 South Baroque Avenue. I've been doing choir since 3rd grade, and to me, access to musical education is a super vital part of my experience and many others' experience. For all kids to be able to have access to music at a young age, especially choir, is so important, the same way math and English are important. The benefits of music education are endless. It has helped me improve my grades, give me better study skills, become more organized, and having music classes during the day has helped me to become more relaxed and help me to focus more. It is my favorite part of my day is my music classes, and I always look forward to them throughout the day. Along with this, it can help studying music can help prepare students for life. It teaches them the importance of time management and the importance of taking responsibility for your actions. One way that we do this is throughout small group learning. Every week when I have a question or something I'll remember, I have a small group then, I can ask about it then. It has helped me to get to know my peers better and created more of a sense of community, especially for choir students. And in my opinion, I don't think there should be a reason why band and orchestra can have multiple teachers at schools and are allowed to have more small groups, whereas choir is put on the back burner and only has one. This is something that I've thought about before, and I think it's important that the school board can look at this and consider whether or not this is an action they want to take. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, next up is Jennifer.
I'm Jennifer Moen. I live at 4774 Coolidge Street, and I'm not a public speaker. It's my first time in a school board meeting, so hello. I was here for a different topic, but I would also like to add that a music education is paramount to a well-rounded education. I have a minor in music. I picked up the violin when I was 5, the piano when I was 7, and the oboe when I was 11 or 12. My dad is a professor, well, he's deceased, but I was a professor at UW River Falls in the music department, and he was chairman for many of those years. And that's where I met my mom, and she also taught. She had a master's in music, so I wholeheartedly support that effort. I was invited to speak because there was a post on social media regarding bullying, and I'm not sure if anybody else here is planning on speaking to that effect, but I had shared some ideas, and I was asked to come. And I did a little bit of looking online, and I called, and I asked, I think it was John Tanner, respectfully, what does the school district have in place for bullying? Because there was just so many people had posted scenarios and personal stories about really bad things that have happened to themselves here in this in this building and in this district, and to their children. And I just wanted to bring it up that I'm not sure what your feedback is, and maybe we need to figure out how to take its pulse and find out what's working and what's not working. But I've just put together a list of a couple of ideas. I found some websites. If you just type in bullying, there's one called OCALI, OCALI.org, stompoutbullying.org, safechild.org. I looked in the Oregon Public Library, and I just typed in the word bully, and there are 180 pages of resources on bullying. I think that just some of the other things I wrote down were just like, I'm not exactly sure, what the classroom looks like and what it would take to make any changes, if maybe changes are warranted. But like maybe some ideas would be like peer-to-peer feedback, imagery to help children to learn resilience and have stronger social skills, parent involvement with take-home assessments, written signature required. Maybe the kids can put on a play. This is all grade levels. Some required reading on the subject, watch videos and write a report and give feedback, teach the psychology of bullying, what kind of characteristics and what's the psychological profile of a bully, and how can that be disarmed? Can the kids sign a pledge at the beginning of the year saying that they promise to stomp out bullying and do what they can to speak up when they see it? Maybe some peer groups where people can meet in small groups a couple times a week and discuss it. Leadership training and development for kids of all ages. And to make it clear what to do if a student does get bullied, where do we find a form to fill out? Apparently there's a form on the website. Thank you.
Time is up.
All right.
Thank you. Okay, next up is Heather.
Heather Higbee, 137 East Richards Road. Oregon School District priority number 3 is to provide a safe, welcoming, and equitable environment for students and staff. As a parent, I do not believe the Oregon District is in fact doing this. I believe although there is a lot of talk about bullying, there is a severe lack of action. Oregon School District bullying policy states it will consistently and vigorously seek to eliminate bullying. I repeat, Oregon School District bullying policy states it will consistently and vigorously seek to eliminate bullying. However, after speaking out publicly about my concerns, it is very clear that bullying is alive and well here in the Oregon School District. I have received dozens of messages from parents, grandparents, young adults, and students who shared equal concern. My son often no longer reports being bullied because, in his own words, they don't do anything. All they do is talk, talk, talk. No further actions are being taken. My son no longer feels he can turn to his teachers for help. The schools know who the repeat bullies are, but they are hesitant to do more than talk. I'm asking the school district and board to uphold their own policy that they will consistently and vigorously seek to eliminate bullying. I ask the Oregon School District and board to protect my child by utilizing detention and suspension. You state you have no tolerance for bullies. but you continue to allow them in classrooms with their victims. I am asking the district to remove bullies from the classrooms immediately so the rest of the students can learn in an environment where they feel safe. Oregon School District and Board, the Oregon community is asking you to take serious consideration into the mental well-being of our children. I do not stand alone in asking you to uphold your own policies and enforce your zero tolerance for bullying.
Thank you. Okay, next up is John.
Good evening, John Evans. I live at 435 Ash Street. I'm here tonight to talk about music education as well, so switching back to the former subject. Just want to echo Audra's and the other students' comments. I don't think I could say what they said any better than they did, especially the students. I guess I feel like there should be parity between choral programs and the orchestra and band programs. I fully support that. My experiences in the district are more with the orchestra program. I have a 10th grader in the high school program currently who's come up in the program since 4th grade, and then also a middle schooler in the middle school program. I guess my ask would be looking at the agenda action item tonight about the budget. I do appreciate that there's no cuts to the music program. That's awesome to see. I guess I would challenge you to potentially, obviously, consider the choral small group program, but also potentially a small group program at the middle school. I think we're seeing very large class sizes. I think they could benefit from a small group program there. My daughters in particular, they don't do a lot of team activities, sports or otherwise. Orchestra is the one thing that they do in school that really is a team activity for them. It creates all sorts of educational opportunities for them with team building, getting along with other people, resolving conflict, working together, public speaking, although through music, of course, not through voice. In particular, my daughter at the middle school, I think would love to have a small group program and spend more time with Miss Black and the other music educators. And I guess just in conclusion, I know how hard it is when it comes to capital budgets and operational budgets and staffing. I do this, it's my day job for a municipality, so I totally understand the constraints you guys are under, and appreciate you guys considering what we could do to expand music education in the district. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Mike.
Hi, my name is Mike Kiffel. I live at 672 North Perry Parkway. I'm talking about the music education as well. I might hit on the other topic as well. Basically, I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today about the vital role of music in our schools. As you consider the budget priorities, I urge you to recognize music education as an essential academic subject, one that not only enriches students' lives, but also directly enhances their performance in core areas like math, reading, and writing. Research consistently shows that students who participate in music perform better academically. Music strengthens cognitive skills, improves memory, and enhances language development, abilities that directly support literacy and mathematical reasoning. In fact, most studies have linked music education to higher test scores, increased graduation rates, and greater long-term success in both academic and professional fields. Wisconsin's own WMEA music standards emphasize the integration of music with critical thinking, problem solving, and communication skills that mirror those developed in traditional academic subjects. Music education is not just an extracurricular activity. It is an intellectual discipline that demands practice, perseverance, and creativity. It teaches students how to analyze patterns, interpret complex structures, and collaborate, essential skills in today's workforce. Despite its proven academic benefits, music programs are often the first to face budget cuts. I understand, again, everybody's looking for vital money. Small group and one-on-one instruction are particularly valuable as they allow teachers to tailor learning experiences, build confidence, and provide individualized support, just as we do in core academic subjects. I think I can say to the student speakers that came up, I should go to them and talk to them about speaking because they're very well at doing that, so obviously something's rubbing off on them. We invest in music education. We are not choosing between music and math or between arts and literacy. We are strengthening in all these subjects. So I think it's important for those reasons. I have more to talk about music, but I also want to mention that I had three kids that went through Oregon School District, two that did violin and trombone from 5th grade through senior in high school, and one that's in music education at Whitewater right now. I've seen the experiences that they've had through music, through small group, large group, competitions. My youngest, who's in music education at Whitewater right now, is in New York City playing in Carnegie Hall this week. So I think it's important to keep this. The other topic that everybody was talking about in terms of bullying, I'm disappointed to hear that there's still problems. I just heard about that today. And my oldest kid basically left school because of bullying. So I'm going to leave it at that. Schools district, if this is still going on, you need to do better.
All right, thank you. Our last registered public speaker is Martha.
Hello, my name is Martha Klug. I live at 351 Oakwood, and I came tonight because I wanted to listen to what the community had to say. I'm a teacher. I substitute teach at all the schools. I've been to all the schools, and I'm in a long term right now. And I wanted to hear what the buzz was about on Facebook regarding bullying, because I have some strong feelings on it. Every single idea that the first person who spoke on bullying had, I've seen or worked with directly implemented. And it's not to diminish your ideas or say that they're bad. I just think that it also needs to be said that we are doing them. And there's a lot of different angles to go about bullying. And I feel like the Oregon School District has a lot of quality things in place that do make a difference. I, as a teacher, can I do better? I hope so. I hope I can always do better and do more to help support students and make them feel safe in their learning environment. Just personally, my experience is that I have been supported by my administration and by my fellow teachers. And the buzz in the teacher lounge isn't against hearing new ideas and new opportunities in which we can do better to support students who are going through that. And I also don't want to minimize anybody's experiences, because I know how horrible and how valid those things can be. But I think it really starts from the bottom up. It starts from the students being able to report it, either to their family or to their teachers, and us as teachers making a community in which they feel comfortable doing so, and then our administrators making us as teachers and the students feel comfortable going to them with those opportunities. And I think it grows from there. But I couldn't let it go unsaid about how much work and blood and sweat and tears is going into the anti-bullying program. And I'm pro the cell phone, taking away cell phones at schools. I think that's a huge distraction.
All right, thank you. Is anyone else here for public comment? One more time, anyone here for public comment? Okay, thank you for all our speakers this evening. All right, moving on to OEA report. We do have a representative from the OEA, but they will not be speaking tonight. So that takes us to information item 3, which is our student report. And we have Ryan and Will here tonight. So the floor is yours, guys.
Hi, my name is Ryan Fahey.
And I'm Will Schmidt.
And we're here just to give a little update about what's going on at the high school.
So right now there's a lot going on in the high school during this time of the year. Tomorrow, freshmen, sophomores, and seniors have the day off while the juniors take the ACT. Additionally, parent-teacher conferences are this week, as we're in the last few weeks of the third quarter, leading us to spring break.
Yeah, in the last few weeks, all of the winter sports have wrapped up their seasons in the playoffs, and a special shout out to several Panthers who are individual state qualifiers: swimmers Teo Figueroa and Brandon Tereba, boys wrestlers Evan Fay, Cade Auberg, and Caden Schwartz, and girls wrestler Tegan Simpson. Additionally, spring sports are on the way. The track and field teams had their first practice today, and all other spring sports have their first practices in the next few weeks. Additionally, 2 weekends ago, the OHS Theater Department put on their production of The Little Mermaid, which set an attendance record for the OHS musicals. The OHS choir has a concert tomorrow, while orchestra has their concert next week Monday, and band has a concert next week Tuesday. Perfect. That's all we have to update you guys.
All right, quite a bit going on. Thank you, guys. All right, moving on to C action items. Our first is the 2025-2026 preliminary budget and recommendations for school staffing. So I will turn that over to Dr. Bergstrom.
Thank you. The majority of that presentation will be given tonight by Andy Weiland and Gina Jonan. I just wanted to start off by saying we're all paying very close attention to the development of the state budget because it has a significant impact on many things, but on schools in particular. And so the conversations that we're having and the things that we heard tonight are very relevant to this. And given the fact that the revenue limit has not kept pace with inflation, we know that we had to make some difficult decisions about ensuring our children get what they need. And it's always challenging, but this year it was particularly so. And so I'm going to be handing this off to Mr. Weiland now to talk just a bit about the very preliminary budget.
Thank you, Dr. Bergstrom. We're kind of at table or part 2 of the budget summary, which is table 1. I'm going to kind of walk us through that, but just to kind of echo the comments that Dr. Bergstrom made, this is our first look at this. There are a lot of projections in what we're talking about here. We're very early in the process. The legislature hasn't forwarded any, the governor did forward his budget proposal, but the legislature has at this point not really embraced that. And so we're kind of waiting for to find out what the legislature wants to do. So we've made lots of assumptions. I think they're logical assumptions. They're probably a little bit on the conservative side. And so the information that I'm going to be sharing with you is probably the ceiling of things that we would have to request or ask for in order to make everything kind of work. So our hope is, quite honestly, that the area where we feel like the legislature hopefully will help us the most is actually in the funding of special education. Last biennial budget, they tried to make an effort to help with a funding source that has been decreasing for decades for school districts. And unfortunately, the effort came up a little short, and it's actually decreased even more. So when we spend some money for special education, they had hoped to be about 32 cents on the dollar back to us. And at this point in time, we're thinking that we're going to be right around 30 cents on the dollar. So it's actually decreasing again. And so we're hoping, and we're making kind of a full ask of the legislature to help us with that, because we transfer over $7 million from our education fund to our special education fund to help kind of take care of the needs of our students. So with that being said, I'm going to kind of go through the chart real quickly. If people have questions, please feel free to ask. One of the advantages that we have, and we're probably one of 3 of 10 districts in the state that are actually in this situation where we actually have some growth in our student population. Many districts in our state are actually declining in enrollment, but because we are growing in student population, and we are projecting just basically maintaining, but because we've grown over the last couple of years, a 17 student increase FTE, that would produce about $265,000 additional dollars for us. So that's line 1. Line 2 is the revenue limit increase, and as we've talked about with the board in the past, the $325 is actually in law right now, but it is subject to a Supreme Court case where it is being under review. The way the governor created the $325 is something that's a question. So, but we feel that it's a prudent assumption to make at this point in time that that's about $2.5 million. So everything we're talking about right now is on the revenue side of the equation. Per pupil categorical aid, we would not anticipate an increase of dollar amount or an allowance of that. It's around $726 per student, but we do, because of the growth in our population, look at an additional 17 kids or FTE, and that would produce about $12,600. Open enrollment, we created our spots. The intent was to basically kind of be neutral and not really budget additional dollars related to open enrollment. So right now we're showing a 0 impact there. Special education, we are using that 30.1 or 30.5% number. Again, the legislature intended us to be the 32 or 33%, but unfortunately, the amount of money that was allocated was not sufficient enough to get us there. If you hear this concept of some sufficient or some certain, that's what that's all about. Some sufficient means if they give us a percentage, we're going to get that percentage. Some certain means they're going to throw a dollar amount at it, and whatever the dollar amount is the amount of money that's going to be spent. And so if more claims come in for that, then that percentage drops, and that's exactly what's been happening to us for several years. Personal property replacement tax. This was something that actually we got this year. It was a change in how that actually taxpayers don't have personal property replacement anymore. That was abandoned in the budget, and the legislature actually gave municipalities and school districts the ability to make up those funds through general purpose revenue, and so that is an increase. We weren't sure that they intended to give us that last year, so we didn't allocate it to continuing expenses, but in talking to several different people, we feel that it's codified in law, it's now practice, so we anticipate to continue to get that revenue. Transfer of service is related to students that we've had that have come into this school year, and costs associated with basically servicing those students this particular year. And so that is a number that I think Gina might talk a little bit about later, or I can try to help as well. But that's basically been in the law for a number of years related to if we have students that have needs that move into the district that are identified ahead of time, we have the ability to, under the revenue limit, ask for those additional dollars. Prior year open enrollment expense, this was a one-time expense that we got last year related to students that came in after the tax levy had been set, that the formula allows us to capture those dollars. It's a process where DPI certifies that amount of money for us, and last year, meaning this year, we were able to quantify, or we were able to capture those dollars. It really has moves every year, and it's a one-time revenue that we would get. So unfortunately, we are not planning on having that. We aren't aware of any students that are out there, and that number was a little bit larger than what we've experienced in the past. Unused taxing authority, this is under the revenue limit that we haven't accessed over the last couple of years. That's not all the money that we would have to be able to access, but it is based on the boards of education discussion, a portion of that money that we could access this year. And so if you add up all those revenues together, we're a little over $3 million. Again, the hope is that the state budget would allow us to get some additional special education funding that would come through general purpose revenue and increase that percentage from 30.5% to perhaps, well, there are proposals for 60%. We'd love to be able to get to that point in time, but anything in the right direction would be obviously welcome. So are there any questions related to the revenue side of the equation?
Well, look around the room. Does anyone have any questions for Andy about the revenue side of the equation? I just want to point out what Andy said in terms of this being a preliminary budget, and I want to make sure people hear that because we are getting less funding for special ed, that means we have to take more money from our general fund and move it to special education. So that impacts any move that we would be able to do in terms of adding staff or doing other things. And so if the state legislature and the governor come to agreement that we would get more special education funding, we could put that money in the special education fund. Instead of transferring $7 million to that separate fund, we would have more in operating. That's a really, really key piece of this budget.
Absolutely.
So, sorry, I just want to emphasize that because that is at the state right now.
It is.
Not at the Oregon School District.
The next one, I think, Gina, did you want to take over for the expenditure side of things, or did you want me to take care of that? That's still yours. Oh, that's still me. Okay, perfect. Apologize for that. We didn't practice the handoff. So the expenditure side, and I'm wanting to make sure I have the full page on my thing here, is the educator compensation schedule and salary increase. So CPI was certified at 2.95, but many of the area districts around us are using 3%, which isn't very far from the 2.95. So that would be a little over $1,060,000 just to provide that increase to our educators. There's also step and lane movement, which we don't have a ton of steps, but we do have 2 significant steps in our schedule, as well as 1 lane movement. So we are anticipating that at just under 230 or just over 232,000. Other staff increases. So what I just mentioned was related to teachers and professional staff in that area, but we also have support staff and other staff members in the district. So we include that 3% in there for them is about approximately 400,000. We do have a health insurance increase. Actually, we feel we're fortunate to only have a 4.5% increase budgeted. I will tell you that today we actually got some notifications, good and bad. The notification is that our GHC is our provider. They're actually looking at a 4% increase for us. However, our dental plan right now is not performing quite as where we'd like it to be, so we're kind of calling that a neutral thing at this point in time. 4K per pupil increase. We do work with a number of community partnerships or partners providing 4K, so we provide a per student allocation to them, and just as we're having increases for our staff, they would obviously like to have staff increases as well. So we are providing a 3% increase for our per pupil increase, per pupil allocation to those providers. We would anticipate a transportation contract increase of approximately 3% as well. But we also anticipate with some of the growth that we're having, specifically on the north side of the district, that we might need to add an additional bus route or 2, depending on how that growth plays out. So you see a additional bus route there, and then special education is also something. We currently do not have a bus with a lift for students that have wheelchairs needs. To the north side of the district, all of our buses with lifts are basically within the Village of Oregon or south. So we are anticipating that eventually we're going to have a problem not having something for that. So we are working on a proposal to have that available. Additional special education, I'm sorry, I missed one. Early childhood teacher, is this where you're going to jump in, Gina, or no? No?
I'm happy to jump in wherever you'd like me to.
All right, this sounds like a good spot. And I'll come back with maintenance and athletics.
Okay. And so this really gets into, if you hear a theme tonight, it'll be we need more special education funding from the state. And so in terms of these are needs that we've had to add this year. And so I was going to talk about this in staffing, but I think it's important to understand the legal requirements that we have related to special education. So under federal law, any student who qualifies for special education, we are required to provide what we call FAPE, and that means a free and appropriate public education that is based on an individualized education program or an IEP that is developed by a team of staff, parents, an administrator, often our student services staff, and then any other outside providers that may be invited. So we have a team of people that looks at the students' needs and they come up with a plan. And usually in that plan, they have specialized minutes of instruction, they have goals for the students to work on, and we are legally required to have the student show progress or proficiency towards those goals. So once those goals are developed and those instructional minutes are put in and programming is done, such as occupational therapy or physical therapy or speech and language, we are legally required to meet that obligation. However, we don't receive more funding based on the needs that our students have, right? That is determined at the state level. And so we also have students that move into our district, which is wonderful, but they may have an IEP from a prior school district that a team has already decided what those needs are. And we do reevaluate those needs on a schedule, but that I just want people to understand that those are legal obligations we have to do. We can't say, oh, we don't have funding for you. We can't meet that OT need or that speech and language need. Often those IEPs have students that might need a one-on-one paraprofessional support. So we're not able to say we don't have the staffing the funding to meet that need. So when you see that on the revenue side, those are positions we've had to add this year because we needed to meet legally those obligations in the IEP. And we expect those needs to continue. We always hope, our goal always is that a student, we would get to the place of proficiency that a student wouldn't need programming anymore. And we do have students that we determine that they don't need special education programming anymore and they return to regular instruction. But those are the needs we've identified for next year. Additionally, we have seen an increase in needs in our early childhood and in our kindergartners. And so once those are identified, then we want to continue to meet those needs throughout their time in the district as long as they need them. And so just wanted to give a background to all of you as to why that funding from the state is really so critical and why we always try in the Oregon School District to meet the needs of each and every student. And as those special education needs increase, that is less money that we have to fund other positions. And then, so I'm happy to take questions about that, but just moving down to the expenditure side, to also help with funding and just have a different model. We had an increase in our teacher leadership teams and PBIS stipends. So at the high school, they used to have a common time that leadership team meant. In order to meet the course demands and not have to add teachers, we moved to a different model at the high school, and that was with leadership team input. And so instead of doing that, then they work outside of contract time, and we pay a stipend for that like we did K-8. So now all of our schools are in alignment with that. Maintenance and operations, as you can imagine, as prices go up, it also costs more to maintain. Our contractors have increased their prices. We understand that. So those are maintenance and operations costs that we really have to have specialists take care of for us. Athletics, as our teams do better, which is exciting, we have increased costs with transportation and supplies and event workers. And so we're anticipating that for next year. So you'll see that total at the end is our anticipated expenditures. But I want to be really careful to say, because I don't want teachers to leave this meeting thinking, oh, everyone's getting a 3% increase. That is not the case. We have a certified teachers union. We need to bargain the salary schedule. It has to be within budget, and the board and the union have to ratify that. So that is just a dollar amount placeholder that Andy and I anticipate based on the budget, but we really need to hear more from the state about what our budget is. And I'm hoping we will know more when Joint Finance introduces their budget and get a better sense. So these are just very preliminary numbers. I don't want people to walk away from this meeting thinking everyone's getting a 3% raise, because that is absolutely not the intent of this information tonight.
Okay, so I'll pause for a second, and before we move into the allocation of the 551, that is the balance, does anyone have any questions for Ms. Jonan or Mr. Weiland about the significant expenditures portion of this document? Go ahead, Leslie.
I'm wondering on the maintenance, and this might be clarified better when we get into our next action item, but is this 50,000 in addition to what's on there, or is that, how does that work?
Sure. So the next agenda item is related to our maintenance budget, where we allocate a certain amount of money for projects. That amount of money has not increased. So that's staying the exact same as it was last year and the year prior. This is an additional money that's not going into related to projects, but just as Ms. Jonan said before, related to increased costs associated with our contractors. So we have projects that we do, and then we have other things. The other thing I'll just mention, and many of you may know, if you have water bills in the Village of Oregon, we had a significant increase on January 1st related to our water bills. And so there are utility increases that are happening as well. That's in that $50,000. So it's not only services, but some of the utilities things that we have too.
Thank you, that makes more sense.
All right, any other questions? Okay, let's move on to the staffing summary. Again, preliminary.
Yes. So the positions in Table A are the positions that the administrative team is requesting. Ideally, we would love for the board to approve them tonight, because we are now in what I call hiring season. So as you can imagine, I would say schools across Wisconsin have seen increased needs in special education. And so it is a very competitive position to hire for. So from an HR lens, would love to post them sooner rather than later, but also understand that we want the board to have information they need to make the best decision. So an ideal would be approval tonight, and we also understand if that needs to wait. So the first position we're requesting is a special education teacher at Prairie View Elementary. We had 7 students who either moved into our district or qualified this year for special education programming. And in looking at the needs across Prairie View in terms of the specialized instructional minutes, the needs that the students had, and the IEP goals, that we were not able to physically fit it in the workday. And so we had a number of people come in to try to redo the schedule to try to make that work, and we were not able to do that. And so we did hire about a month ago an interim special education teacher. We got extremely lucky, and she has 10 years, at least 10 years of experience, and has been doing an amazing job. So we're hoping to make that position permanent. That would be posted, and she would need to apply if she's interested, but just feel really grateful and fortunate to be able to have her in our district. So seeking to add that as a permanent position when we look at the 4K that'll be in kindergarten at Prairie View, as well as the other needs at the elementary. Similarly, looking to add a half-time occupational therapist, that we don't have enough FTE to meet the OT minutes that are required district-wide for occupational therapy for our students. And so there's a description there about what our occupational therapists do for those of you who are interested. So seeking to add that district-wide. And then similarly, we are seeking to add a program support coordinator that would focus on RCI and OMS. It doesn't mean that we would hire someone for those 2 schools. We have 2 program support coordinators now, so we would look as to how to best divide those assignments. But really just looking at our students' needs in grades 5 through 8, that we feel that program support coordinator position is really critical to assist our case managers in special education, because there's a lot of needs and just legal paperwork that we have to do. And so seeking to work with them to look at behavioral support for their students as well. As our students' needs increase, then sometimes we see behavior, because behavior is communication. And that's something that we spend a lot of time in helping our students work on and regulate, and being able to be self-advocates. And so just seeking to add another person to that team as our numbers have increased. And you'll see that in Appendix A, how our numbers have increased over time in terms of the percentage and the number of IEPs that we are servicing across the district. And that doesn't include our 504 plans that our school psychologists also work on. And those numbers have increased as well. And then finally, we are seeking to make our building substitutes a permanent position in our district. This year, our fill rates are averaging around 70% for our teachers and 45% for our paraprofessional positions. I would say we have been particularly hit by illness this year, and that's one of the reasons for those fill rates. I would say at least one of our principals, if not more, are teaching in classrooms on a daily basis. And so that is something that makes it difficult for them to be instructional leaders or support kids on behaviors when they're having to be the teacher in the classroom. So I really am extremely grateful for our building substitutes. I don't know what we would have done without them this year, given how hard we were hit with respiratory illness. And so every year I think that's going to get better, and every year it feels like our numbers go up. So I don't know how we would manage and do that without that being a position. And when Mr. Weiland and I talked about it, we felt that this was the best year to build that into the budget, because we do have that contract with GHC with the 4.5 health insurance cap. And it's something that I just don't know how we could recommend not having, given the strain on our administrators as well as our teachers that have done a wonderful job filling in for one another, and just hoping to get those fill rates back up. So with that, I will be happy to take questions.
Why don't you go through the special ed programming numbers in Appendix A, if you would, Gina? I think that's really important information that points to your staffing recommendations. So why don't you kind of walk through that, and then we'll open the floor up for clarifying questions, if you would.
Okay, thank you. So in Appendix A, you'll see a column there that talks about initial evaluations. So anytime someone is referred for a special education evaluation, it could be a parent request, a teacher request, based on needs that they're seeing. We have to complete an evaluation to see if they qualify for special education programming. So that is something you'll see the numbers there of the initial evaluations that we have done going back to 2019-20 school year. And so I just wanted to point out at the bottom, you'll see there's 2 years for 2024-25. So this year, and so we don't keep timelines of that data, but this year we've already done 58 initial evaluations, and that's as of March 6th. So that number will probably continue to rise as we finish out the last few months of the school year. So that's the first column. So you can see of the students that were referred to us, the next column is how many qualified for special education programming. And as I said, it may be that some don't qualify at all for any increased accommodation and others may qualify for a 504 plan, but I just wanted to focus on special education program because those are the positions that we're requesting. So you can see there what percentage we average in terms of how many evaluations. For this year, we've done 58 initial evaluations and 57 of those students have qualified. So then the next number you'll see, those are the students district-wide that have IEPs that we have to provide programming for. So I also just wanted to point out that at the beginning of the school year, you can see we were up 10 IEPs. It went last year from 546 to 556. But then, and that was as of October 1st, which is when we have to do our state reporting. So thank you, Ms. Heitz, for that. But now as of March 6th, you can see we've gone up to 593. So those are students that have mainly moved in to our district that have those needs that we have to meet, or students that qualified since October 1st. So that's a pretty significant jump when it's really hard for us to add staff mid-year in terms of case managers. So that's why we're preparing for next year. And then you can see just in terms of our overall percentage that our student numbers are increasing, but our special ed percentage is increasing as well. So wanted to show you the numbers to explain why we're asking for additional staff in those areas.
I just want to make one clarification. When you talk about students moving in, those are resident students. Those are not open enrolled students. Those are students that now live in this district. So we are mandated as resident students to provide special ed services, correct?
Yes, and thank you for asking me to clarify that, because if you'll notice in the open enrolled spaces that the board approved in January, you can see why we have said we don't have space for students that are open enrolled that have special education programming. So these would be only resident students. And the reason why that move-in is important is because when we did staffing last spring, those are student needs that we didn't know about. We tried to budget because we know we're going to have move-ins every year, but this has been a significant increase, which is why we need increase in staff for next year. But yes, those are not open enrolled students.
Okay, I'm going to open up the floor for clarifying questions about the budget. So Mary, do you want to go first? Do you have any questions?
I do have one clarifying question around the building subs. So this is, we last year had agreed to do like one-time funds to fund for, well, I guess for this year, for 24-25. This is, you're talking about adding permanently, correct?
Yes, we are doing that with one-time money for this year. This would be a permanent addition to the budget for next year.
Okay, thank you.
With the hope that eventually we could roll back on the building subs. I would say why it's attractive is we're in the relationship business. And so these are subs that are here every day. They learn the building, they learn the students, they have that relationship. And we can count on them being there for those last minute call-ins.
All right, Heather, any questions from you? Okay, Leslie, anything further from you?
Gina, I'm wondering if and this is you don't need this now. This is, I'm just curious for future. Do we have a graph showing or chart showing the IEPs by grade level where we would need the bigger picture of more special ed, or is it just across the board in general?
So yes, we have that information. So in terms of next year, just in looking, so where we have flexibility, right, is placement for kindergarten in our district, subject to boundaries for transportation, and then a little bit in 5th grade, right, because those are where there's more, where you might change schools. So in looking at where we anticipate people to be based on where they live and the needs, that right now our biggest need is Prairie View. And that's why we're seeking to add a special education teacher there. And then occupational therapy would really, we need the increase in FTE to service the minutes. We just say that's district-wide because it'll depend on where those students are and the number and the minutes that they need. So it's not as though any one building needs an increase in the 0.5 OT, right? That would be spread across and we divide that up based on building. So in terms of our other schools, we do have increased programming needs, but we feel we can meet them with the current FTE that we have.
Okay. And then my other question is say I were a excuse me, I can't speak apparently, community member who is concerned about the lack of special education funding to our schools. Mm-hmm. What would your legal recommendation be for them to do to help support their schools?
Yes, I would say it's always helpful for them to talk to their state elected officials about what they're interested in seeing in terms of the budget. So from our lens, we're always happy to give information, but legally when we're on work time, we don't advocate, right? But we can give information about what our needs are and what increased funding would do and how that would be helpful for our students or really critical for our budget. But in terms of, I would say calling their state elected representatives, and they are free to advocate as a citizen about what they want to see for their public schools.
Wonderful, thank you. Caleb.
So I do have a couple questions and a couple comments, I guess, but I'll start with my questions. So in Table B, the line that's the early childhood teacher, paraprofessional for special education and support for English language learners, that $322,000, that's in addition to, right, if I'm reading this right, the recommendations that are in Part 3, Table A for the new positions. The 322 goes for increased staffing for paraprofessionals, but the Table A is for instructional positions, if I'm looking at it correctly, right?
That's correct. Most of that 322 are paraprofessionals that we've needed to add because students have a one-on-one paraprofessional in their IEP. We also had to add a 0.5 English language learner coordinator in order to make sure that those needs were met, and we also have an obligation to do that as well. But the majority of that number was for paraprofessionals, along with that early childhood teacher. That was a permanent addition due to the increased number of early childhood in 4K. And that was something the board had approved in the budget last year. If you remember, we approved the 1 to 2. Watching our early childhood numbers, we only filled one position based on the numbers we had at the time. But then midway through, we had to increase that by 0.5 due to the needs that we saw in 4K. So the board had already approved the position, now we just have to fund it.
Okay. Because I think that I think it adds again to how much need there is in that area, because it's another $322,000 on top of the what is it, about 550, 250, right? That, yeah, we're asking for 250 of the 550 in the Table A, right, to be positions that are related to needs in special education. And I guess I would just very quickly say that it does again speak to how much, how hopeful I think we all are that we begin to see increased state support in that area, because the need is not going away and the need is just getting bigger. Because we would have 593 students now on IEPs. My other question is with the occupational therapist position, the 0.5, and I think you kind of answered my question, but given what you said just a couple minutes ago, it's a half-time, right? A half-time FTE position. is that, are we hiring someone half-time? And if we're hiring someone half-time, I would anticipate that might be a challenge, but it doesn't sound like maybe we are. We're kind of moving that $50,000 around to cover different positions already, or am I misunderstanding?
So the 0.5 would be 20 hours a week, right? And so we do have current OTs who are part-time. So the first thing we always do is see if anyone would like to go full-time. Sometimes people are not interested in that. They took the job part-time for a reason. But just looking at all of the IEPs and the OT minutes that we have to provide, that we feel we need, that it shows we need an increase of 20 hours. How that time is filled would really be for Dr. Weidenstein to work with the folks in her department. I anticipate we would post a part-time position, and we have been very fortunate that in that field that part-time positions have been more attractive. And so the challenge we have, right, is scheduling when that OT occurs, because we don't want to take students out of things that they love to get their occupational therapy, right? So that becomes more of the challenge of how you fit everyone in, which is why I don't know which particular building that might be based at. That Dr. Weidenstein sits down with all of the OTs and we look at where those minutes are and need to be, and then where we can best do that and not pull kids out of things like music or FIAD or art or, things that they love. And so it's just making the schedule work. So I anticipate it will be a 0.5 position, but we always see if internal people are interested first. Does that answer your question?
One other question. So in part 4, and this has come up in past meetings as well, we've had a number of resignations and retirements. Are there any positions that are either resignations or retirements that are not being filled with the current plan? I mean, I guess I'm asking, are we losing any positions to attrition, given the retirements and resignations, or are all of the positions that have either been retirements or resignations, are those being filled?
We are filling all of the position. The one position that may look a little bit different is the Success Center position. I know that the high school administrators are in the process of evaluating how to best meet the kids' needs at the high school. That may be continuing to have 2 people in the Success Center, and it might be looking a little bit differently. But it's not a position that's going away. It could potentially be reallocated based on student needs, but they're looking at that now. The other positions will be filled. And so you can see from the enrollment is that we keep going up, which is great, right? But that means that it's really hard to decrease FTE when your student numbers are going up.
Okay, that's, I think, all of my questions. I'm just going to say something very quickly, and it goes back to the special education funding need, because we've heard a number of students and parents tonight talk about music education. And it happens, I think, almost every meeting, right, where people come in and very eloquently speak to the importance of music education and lots of other needs. And I just think that if we can be hopeful, maybe it will happen, maybe it won't, but if special education funding is increased, right, that it could potentially free up money that we're having to funnel into special education to meet those kinds of needs. And I think that's why it's so important that we continue to have discussions and speak to that need, so that other areas where there are needs, we can try to address those. But when we're, $7 million plus, right, that it's being put into special education funding to cover that difference, and it gets bigger every year, the difference gets bigger every year, it continues to put us in a really difficult position. But that's neither here nor there.
Well, and I'm glad that you mentioned that, because that's absolutely the goal. And that's the last 2 years we have increased FTE for music education. So that's been really exciting, because as we've gotten closer to spring, and our budget has become more certain, we've been able to do that. Additionally, Dr. Bergstrom, Ms. Walters, and I have been closely monitoring those music numbers. And so right now, I believe the middle school has made their requests for music education, and RCI should be doing that soon. And so we always sit down and look at the section numbers and see how we can best service kids. So I am hopeful that there will be additional ideas that will come. Also, Ms. Jarstead is working with the music department on visioning this year to see how we can remove some barriers that there are to music education and small group participation in terms of kids that need other programming and miss all of their classes because they're being pulled out for various things. And so just really appreciative to the music teachers too, and given their time and ideas to do that. So again, this is preliminary. This is the positions that I know that we're going to need for next year. And the sooner that we can post and fill them, the more ideal it is. But it isn't to say that when the budget becomes more certain that we wouldn't be back in further discussion.
Okay, Anna, you're up.
Thank you. A couple of things, and actually, Gina, you touched on quite a few of them. I guess three primary things, and the first would be, in the past when we've had these staffing reports, we have the Table A and then Table B wish list and then Table C wish list. And so I'd like to understand more about what we're not able to do based on requests from these different schools and leadership teams and the needs of our students and learners. We've heard about music education. We talked about music education last budget. We know there's work happening behind the scenes as it relates to those questions and those concerns. And so I would like to understand more about what we're not doing that we know we maybe want to be doing for our students and our learners. So that's kind of one question is, what are we not able to fund because we have to use our funding to meet our legal obligations from a special education perspective. Secondly, I'd be looking for an update on in the future. Last year we changed our personnel policy to add another paid day off, or we switched a sick day to a paid time off day, or whatever we call that. I'm curious, personal day, thank you. I'd be curious to see where we're tracking on that, because I know we looked at that had a financial impact, and I'm just curious to see where that's tracking, because that was something else that I'd be curious to know where we're falling with that as far as substitute coverage and how that's working from that perspective. And then I would be looking for an update from Darcy or the team on the conversations with leadership teams and music educators on the work that they're doing related to that, because I know that's work that's been happening, and I'd love an update on where we are with that process to just better understand what that's looking like with that hard work that's going into it. So those are my three comments, and I know they're not easy things to answer, so just wanted to put that out there.
Okay, well, in terms of the first one, and so I did do things a little bit differently this year. So if listening to Andy about the budget uncertainty that we have, not only with the state budget, but also with the federal government, that this year we just focused on what are the legal must-haves. And so we didn't do the Table B and the Table C because it felt like I'm not sure we can get there until we know more about the federal budget and the state budget. Now, hopeful, my understanding is joint finance. So Tony Evers put out his budget proposal. Usually joint finance does their budget proposal end of March, April. And so once we see that, because, they are the majority party, right? In the Senate and the Assembly. So that'll just give us a better sense of how far apart they are. And so doesn't mean we can't come back for staffing in April once we know a little bit more, but just really wanted to focus on the must-haves with our team. And then I would say in terms of at least what's, I'll just speak for me in terms of the discussions that I have been hearing from like middle school and RCI is would love to get more support for AVID in terms of the middle school. And then I will just say from an HR standpoint, it's always hard to share staff, across buildings, right? And so RCI, Forest Edge, and middle school all share staff for choir. And so just from a schedule standpoint, that's just hard to make work. And so really, we're also in the process of getting course requests. Like middle school just came in, RCI, I believe, is starting. High school, they're working through all of their requests. So we'll know more once we see what students' requests are and how many that we can meet. Because just because a student requests it doesn't mean it always works, right? Because they may just request something, but maybe there's only one section of AP music, and then that means that they have to make a decision to, prioritize that over something else. So it's all a really big puzzle. So I'll know a little bit more about what we're not able to fund once I have more of those puzzle pieces in place, if that makes sense. But without having more certainty around the state budget and the federal budget, it just seemed like something that we couldn't come to you with.
I appreciate that, and I would just ask that we do get that update when that comes in, because I want to know what we're not able to do. I think that helps our community understand the impact, and maybe we all can become advocates related to increasing special education funding.
Okay. Absolutely. And then in terms of the personal day, yes, we are tracking that because that is a 1-year pilot that we did. And so my plan was to bring the data when we talk about the handbook for next year. I'm happy to bring it earlier, but I would like to get through our respiratory virus season before I give you preliminary numbers on that, because we have had people, particularly if you have children that are in daycare, that's been really hard. And so people are using up their sick time and their personal time. So would just like a little bit of time. So maybe after spring break, happy to update the numbers, but we absolutely are tracking that. And then an update on the music. So we can talk to Dr. Bergstrom about when that would be helpful to have on the agenda. Did I answer your questions? Oh, then the other thing I would add is I know high school always talks to us about more electives, right? Like more electives for kids at the high school level. So,
Heather, I
stay
think you had
tuned.
something?
Yes, thank you. I really liked what Anna said about being advocates for special education funding, and we've used the word hope a lot tonight, which I also have hope, but it's a good reminder that hope is not a strategy, and so actionable things are the way to go. And with that, we've talked about this $7 million number, which is huge, which we have to transfer from our general funding into special education. But Andy, I thought it might be helpful. I think the number, but I want to get it right, is that the state is currently sitting on $7 billion with a B of surplus in the state funding. Is that still accurate to your knowledge?
There is definitely a number with a B in it. There are components that are called the rainy day fund that are set aside. But if you add everything together, I think you're right. I think it's right around $7 billion.
I just have a couple comments. I'm old. I've been on this board a while. And so I think perspective is always helpful. When I've been on this board, first of all, I really want to compliment Andy. Andy has done a magnificent job of being creative and finding funding sources, as well as keeping this district financially sound with his policies. If you think about districts across the state, and I'll talk about my hometown of 400 students in their whole district, they can't keep teachers. They don't have AP teachers at all because they can't afford them. They have referendums that fail. We are such a fortunate district that we are not sitting here cutting jobs and cutting programs. Now, that's not giving everybody what we think we want, but perspective is really healthy right now because it's such an unsettling environment. We get more than $1 million from the federal government. We don't know if we're going to get that this year or next year, right? We have the state that's sitting on a surplus that maybe doesn't really believe in funding special education or funding public education. So what we're looking at tonight is strategies that Andy has found that allows us to have a base budget and cover our legal obligations. I think it's important that this board votes on that tonight and considers us moving forward so we can get positions out there and we can meet our legal obligations. Now, there are things that we are doing as a school board. We're looking at private funding sources so that we can supplement our operational budget so then we can free it up for things that we want to do, right? We have strategies that we've talked about tonight in terms of championing our special ed, families. And I want to make certain that our special ed families understand we believe it's the right thing to do. And what we're talking about tonight is championing you and your children, that you deserve these services and they deserve to be funded by the state government. We can't just do more things and get more money. That's not how public education funding works. We get it from the state of Wisconsin, and they are not fulfilling their obligations to public schools in the state of Wisconsin. That's where we are right now. So thank you all for your service in terms of getting us to the budget of where we can be tonight so we can fund those services for our students. But we've got work to do. And that starts with us championing public education and doing what we can do so we can continue to offer these things and offer such an excellent education that we do in the Oregon School District. So I think that's where we are tonight. But there, again, this is a preliminary conversation and step one. We've got more steps ahead of us, and we got to keep paying attention, and we got to keep championing this school district to get where we need to go. So with that, I will entertain a motion to approve this if people would like to do that.
I'll make the motion to approve the 25-26 staffing plan as presented tonight.
I would second. All right, we have a motion and a second. The floor is open for any further discussion. Go ahead, Mary.
Thanks, Krista. I think there's been a lot of really very good discussion around this, and recognizing that it is a preliminary budget and essentially covers our legal obligations. I am generally supportive of it, but as Anna has also said, I when we come back to the table, I would like to hear what we would like to fund. I'd like to hear the recommendations from the music department. We've been listening to a lot of families coming forward about the music department. I think you all know I have a soft spot in my heart for the music department. I think all too often it's viewed as a co-curricular or, extra. But it's not. It was recognized by the federal government in 2001 as a core academic curriculum. And I know personally that it leads to careers. My son attended Berklee College of Music, which is the #1 contemporary music college in the country. And they train people to become songwriters. They train music therapists. They train film scoring. I mean, the possibilities are endless with a degree in music, right? And so we can't look at it as extra. So that's my little forum.
Any other discussion? Go ahead, Caleb.
I'm going to be very brief and just say that I wanted to just kind of second what you said and the comments that you made. I thought you stated the situation very nicely, and I just want to second and support the statement because I think it's important that we recognize the challenges that we face.
All right, before I call the vote, I'm going to have Dr. Bergstrom comment if she'd like to say a few words.
Thank you. Actually, Wednesday of this week will be an important day for us because myself, Mr. Tanner, and Mr. Weiland are all participating in something called a Day at the Capitol, where we are spending the day with our legislators. And first, we're learning more about where they are at currently in the budget process. And then we have a half an hour scheduled for a meeting with all of the people who represent our part of Wisconsin. And during those meetings, we are, of course, going to share information, making sure I stated exactly as Ms. Jonan said. We'll be sharing information regarding the impact of the special education or lack of special education reimbursement on a school district budget, and the importance of fully funding, ideally, and at the very least, funding in a way that is more fair and manageable. And to Ms. Flanagan's point, we are in an amazing position compared to the districts that are around the state. And so, yes, we want to be able to do other really important things for our children, in addition to the important legal obligations that we have. But I also know that we are not faced with the hard choices that a lot of other places are being faced with. And if we even just, of course it should be fully funded. And I think our official position is a 60% funding. But even if we were to able to get what they originally promised as a sum sufficient component, that would be hundreds of thousands of dollars difference for our district, let alone what it could do for smaller districts around Wisconsin. So thankfully on Wednesday, we have the opportunity to have those conversations with our legislators and talk about the importance of increasing the special education reimbursement rate.
Okay. Katie, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Garrison? Yes. Ms. Wright? Yes. Ms. Bijak?
Yes.
Dr. Bush?
Yes.
Dr. Lakuda?
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, motion carries 6-0. All right, moving on to 2025-2026 capital maintenance budget. I believe Zane is coming up to join us. So when he gets up here, Zane, the floor is yours.
All right, so I will try and not take too long here. So I got a little slideshow like we do every year. We'll kind of go through the projects that we completed last year and kind of the ones that we have on our list for this upcoming year. So. There we go. All right, so 2 projects at Netherwood. We redid the roof of the big gym. There's not a picture of it because it still looks like a roof. It's not exciting. But we did some carpet replacement in the main office with some new walk-off mat and new carpeting in offices in the back. More Netherwood projects. We did new LED lights in the kitchen, along with some plumbing fixes or kind of updates to some very old piping in Netherwood. So, Prairie View, there we go. We replaced the very large bus lot. We also did some kind of improvements with the storm piping, burying a lot of piping underground to kind of take care of the water that sheds across the lot. So that was a great project. Brooklyn, we had a couple smaller ones. We did some cabinet replacement in a classroom and then a concrete slab that was in the kindergarten playground area that nobody had no idea why it was there. We got rid of it. So, Rome Corners, we did some lighting projects in the team areas, mainly due to the original lights and parts availability were coming pretty tough. So we did 2 of the team areas in order to kind of have extra parts and pieces to replace stuff as needed. Middle school, we did some LED light replacement in the library. I think that was one of the most significant projects we did. That library looks 100 times different in the nighttime now with those new lights. We also did some replacement of some DX cooling equipment on the roof as well. A couple small things at the high school here. We did some walk-off mat at door 11, which is one of the main student doors. Just helps kind of keep everything out of the school, knocks dirt, snow, salt, everything off the shoes. And then both sides of the wrestling room staircase ceilings, we put some new ACT ceilings in. And then this was actually one from 2 years ago that got delayed because of the asbestos tile that was underneath the carpet. We got it fully abated and got the new carpeting done in the business classrooms and the offices. So on this year's agenda list, at Prairie View, we have 2 sets of double doors that go out of the gym that need to be replaced. As you can see, the salt and everything really takes a toll on the frames and everything. Obviously, it's a safety issue of making sure those doors are properly operational if there every time needs to be a way out of there. We're also going to add some valves and piping to our chiller there that was new a couple years ago. It's more efficient. It's actually more effective. So we actually don't need as much cooling that goes through the loop all the time. So we kind of need a way to cheat it back around and kind of take some of the pressure issues off, which is causing the unit to want to shut down when it gets too much pressure built up. Brooklyn, we're going to kind of do another round of cabinet replacement in another room very close to the original we did last year. And then we're going to do a replacement of the door 8 frames and hardware and everything. Just an older set of doors right there at the back parking lot that when the weather gets cold, they really want to move around and they don't latch all the time. So it's obviously a safety issue. We want to make sure and get that taken care of right away for them. At the middle school, we want to do some updating with the HVAC system. Most of this is on the 2nd floor. And the kind of the bottom middle one, they've got some radiant ceiling panels that hot water runs through. It's not the most efficient way to heat a room. It feels great if you're sitting right underneath it, But if you're not underneath it, you're not really feeling that heat. So really the idea is to try and take that hot water we're using to warm the radiant panels and actually put it into the VAV to kind of disperse it through the room, through the air. It's just a much more effective way to heat that space. I don't know why, but I guess we at the end of our lifespan, but all those little plastic snow guards that keep all the drifts from sliding down the metal roof all decided to just kind of fall off the roof the other year. So to protect the roof below, we got to add new snow guards back on to make sure that those big snow drifts that slide down don't damage the roof below. So couple more projects at the middle school. We have 2 water heaters. One's kind of the main one for the building. One's for the kitchen that need to be replaced. We've got old cabinets, which I've never heard this term. I call it home ec room. A lot of people here call it FACE. I'm not exactly sure what that stands for, but it was the old room upstairs that had stoves and everything in it. It's now an English classroom, so we just really want to get a lot of that cabinetry cleaned up to just have that an effective space to teach in. The other one over at the middle school is kind of back behind the corner of the gym. There is a underground fuel storage tank that's kind of getting towards the end of its life cycle. One of the biggest issues is that we're actually moving forward to this is that the monitoring equipment, gear, computer, and everything that monitor the tank per all the legal requirements is kind of also at the end of its life cycle. It's a $10,000 to $15,000 replacement of all that stuff, and we probably really only have about 5 years left on the tank. So we're kind of making the decision that it's going to have to get removed at some time. So we might as well save the money and putting it in parts and pieces and actually, just kind of pull it out of there. So at the high school, we've got 2 decent-sized roofing projects, both the Commons and the Augs Gym roof, along with kind of, I guess, the PAC lobby are going to get done. We'll do the Commons right away in between end of school and start of summer school because that actually is a complete tear off down to the deck. The Augs Gym and the PAC lobby is just taking all the stones off and kind of putting a new skin on top, so we can do that while summer school is in session if we need to. So 2 more projects here at the high school. The middle section of the Commons still has kind of the old original open grid and lighting components. So we're actually going to take all that down, clean it up with new ACT ceiling as well as new LED lights to kind of match what's on the outside of the Commons already. And then our lift in the back at door 31 is kind of failed and rusted out. It doesn't get used a lot, so we're just going to remove it and then fill it. It's just not in a great location to really get a semi-truck back around the back of the high school, so it just doesn't get a lot of use anyways. A couple district-wide projects. So at the pool, so actually when I come back next year, this project probably won't be done yet, but when they do the spring shutdown next spring, they're going to repaint the black lane lines of the pool. We also are going to do some upgrades, replacement of some older HVAC controllers, the pieces that actually handle boilers, chillers, air handlers. Get some of those replaced and then have extra parts and pieces on site in case we have issues. We also have to slowly work on taking care of some of our cross-connection plumbing issues. This has kind of been out there. The state is finally pushing municipalities to move this forward. So there's certain code requirements of height and spacing and different things with the plumbing piece. We took care of a handful of stuff already. We're just working with the village to slowly not kind of building off by building off. So, and then this last one at Netherwood is actually out of a little different fund. This is our Fund 46 budget money that we're proposing. It's a kindergarten remodel project. So the 4 kind of green spaces that you see on there is actually going to become the 4 dedicated kindergarten rooms. One already is in kind of that spot. It's 2 medium-sized classrooms along the right side are going to get turned into 1 full-size kindergarten room. And then there's one at the top that's kind of a small kindergarten room that'll be expanded. The yellow spaces are actually going to become dedicated office space. There's a lot of times that those medium-sized rooms get used for like one-on-one or offices. It's just not a great use of space. The pink is going to be a special ed space kind of in the middle there, down there for the younger learners. And then blue is where the OT PT room is going to get moved to down in that area. So.
All right, the floor is open for questions for Mr. Heights. Who would like to start? Go ahead, Heather.
Thank you for running us through this.
Yep.
I am asking a question from a financial perspective. I am not making, I'm not advocating for or against anything that I'm about to ask, but purely from, so some of these things like the plumbing and, roofing and things that, those are absolute needs, right? Like a roof needs to be replaced. I understand that. Can you just talk a little bit about, especially the high school lighting one? So are there things on here that, again, I understand brighter, energy efficient, that all makes sense.
Yep.
But in this tight monetary environment, can you just talk about like something like that, why we're doing that or why now or what's the impetus for it?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of a ripple effect. So one of the issues we're having with our older lighting systems is they're just not performing well. You go into a lot of buildings and you hear the humming, you hear the flickering. That's the old bulbs and ballast. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I think they've stopped putting effort into making those quality anymore because they go out really fast. So unfortunately with the commons, it's not the easiest space to get into, change lights and everything like that. So we were looking to replace the lights anyway. The old configuration is not a great kind of 4x4 lighting system. We really want to spread those out, which now you're talking about making changes to the ceiling. So it almost kind of became, well, we're up there anyways.
Right.
If we start making a bunch of changes, we're going to have half the money in already. We might as well just kind of finish it out. So.
Okay,
I just want to comment though. Andy, I think it's important that you comment about the difference between a capital maintenance budget and an operation budget. And I know you know that. I just want to make sure that point is hit home. That this is not money we can interchange.
Yeah, this was specifically set aside from our district and multiple referendums to set aside basically to do these types of maintenance things, to maintain our buildings and make sure that they don't fall into disrepair. The other thing I thought I would quickly add is, Zane, basically there are some large incentives for LED lighting right now that may not last for very long. How many times it was like?
It's like 3 times what it normally is this year for LED lighting. So.
Right. So we're trying to capitalize on that as well. So that's probably pushed us a little bit as well in that direction. But the main thing with LED lighting is maintenance costs. As Zane alluded to, getting lifts up there, trying to fix this stuff and everything, changing the bulbs constantly, all those types of things. LEDs just fixes that, and unless you have a failure, you got 20 years of life on those things.
And I'm sorry if I jumped in, if that was your point.
Comment. So again, I appreciate all of these things you're saying, and I just want to actually make sure that some of this comes out, because what I don't want it, as we're flipping through these slides, to say it would be nice. It is nice, but there are also financial reasons that we are doing it now, or savings that we're seeing as a district, so that it isn't just, we'll do this and we'll do that. And I'm not saying that you're saying that it is. It's more just doubling down on the fact that it's either a cost savings or we're up, the roof is coming off already. And so that these things have been talked about at length, for years prior and leading up to this.
The other thing I'll just briefly mention is the Netherwood remodeling project is actually coming from Fund 46, which is, we put those funds aside for that specifically. Again, can only be utilized for capital projects. And that's why we're actually asking you to approve 2 things, the $850,000 long-term maintenance list, as well as the capital planning list. You'll notice that we have to have a 10-year per law Fund 46 capital planning projects. We came up with a list of things that are going to be needed to happen during that 10 years. Maybe some of that comes out of the $850,000 as we go through, but we needed to have it on the approved list for us to be able to spend the money.
Heather, did you have any other? Okay. Go ahead, Mary.
So, and Andy, I know we've talked ad nauseum about, pie in the sky, what would we do? But are there things like the LEDs that, because I know like the high school has the highest monthly every month when we look at the, right? Are there other ways that we could realistically capture cost savings moving forward? by upgrading.
Absolutely. There are I don't know what percentage of this building do you think is LED?
I bet you we got to be close to 65, 70% LED.
Okay. So, I mean, the first thing that most people talked about with efficiencies and those types of things is LEDs is like a no-brainer. And that's why when we saw that they're actually giving us 3 times the amount of money to change to LED, we're like, we should really take advantage of that because it's such a no-brainer. It's something that people should do anyhow. But now they're actually willing to incentivize us to do it. So that's probably the first thing. The other thing I would say, and we want to kind of watch what's going on in Washington and let this play out a little bit, but adding additional solar specifically to this building is something Zane and I are really interested in because the base load of energy that it takes for this building is so huge. We'd love to have some more solar panels on this building. It would just make sense. We'd probably never get to the point where we're selling energy back to the grid, but that's okay. The energy that we're buying from the grid is the most expensive energy, so we might as well see if we can offset that if we can. And absolutely, that happens during the day when the sun is shining. So, other things, Zane, that you can think of from an efficiency perspective?
No, I mean, it's some of this stuff is like, I know there's kind of 3 buckets here. We got the capital maintenance projects, I've got operations, then I got maintenance. Some of these tools that we're using with the capital maintenance is helping operations, is helping the maintenance side as well. And just if somebody might be wondering, like, wow, you guys are really talking about those LED incentives, we got one project. We're actually doing a lot of projects right now with a lot of the focus on energy money. We actually got back from the solar on the pool. So we're handling that through kind of that revenue source currently right now. So there actually will be a decent amount of LED lights that do get done between kind of now and the summer. So.
Anything else, Mary? No. Okay. How about this side of the room? Any questions for Zane or Andy? Go ahead, Caleb.
So this is just for my own. I've been on the school board almost 2 years now, which is hard to believe, and I'm still. I still don't completely understand all the budget and the budget lines. With Fund 46, the $300,000 coming out of Fund 46, it says that, right, that it said that we have a $1.4 million amount in Fund 46 right now.
Yep.
And the $300,000 that comes out of that. Is Fund 46 a fund? I mean, how does that fund work? Is it a fund that we have to carry a balance in? Is it a fund that we eventually have to pay down? I just don't remember in our discussions how Fund 46 works, and I wanted to ask you that question.
Sure. So Fund 46, there's actually a couple different capital planning tools that we have. We have Fund 46, which basically means we can expense money as we put it into that fund. Our big put into the fund last year was we had a TIF expire in Fitchburg, and so we put it into Fund 46. And here's the idea, and hopefully this means reminds you of what we were kind of thinking about. That we have a lot of roofing projects. We have a lot of roofing projects that are getting close to needing to have happen. But we're also maintaining those roofs and trying to extend their lives as much as possible. The concern was before we had that money set aside in that budget is that it would take us 2 years perhaps to plan for a large roofing project if all of a sudden something started catastrophically failing, and that would be a problem for us. By having a little bit more than $1 million in that fund, if we get to a point in time where something has to change very quickly, we can pivot and be able to change that fairly quickly within 6 months or something of that nature. So that's really, it's kind of our security blanket. That if, because we don't want to have to change roofs out prematurely, but we also know that we can't have them all expire at the same time. So we have to kind of strategically kind of think that through. And we use a roofing consultant to kind of help us in that. I will tell you, and this is probably more information than you wanted to know, our main focus is attacking roofs that are at the end of their life expectancy and have ballast on them. What ballast is big rocks, okay? Because the problem is when you get a leak in a roof that has big rocks, you have to go up there and grab, hopefully not that. You're scaring me now. But in order to find the leak, you have to take shovels up there and start shoveling rocks all over the place to try to find a leak. And sometimes these leaks start over there, but produce something way over here. And so then you're shoveling rocks all over the place. Once we can get to all rubber roofs, which is what we've been trying to get to for the last couple decades, then patching those and extending the life of those becomes much easier. More information about roofing than you probably ever wanted to know. But so as soon as we got that $1 million in that fund, we also have this need at Netherwood to try to make some rooms that we believe will always be, need to be updated. It's inefficient use of space right now. Sometimes we have one specific staff member that's in a 700 square foot classroom. Now we'll have nice classrooms with bathrooms, and those kindergarten rooms will be able to stay in operation for many years to come. And they're all centrally located right by each other.
All right. Any other questions, comments? Okay, I will entertain a motion.
I make the motion. I move to approve C2, the capital maintenance project as described in the.
All right, Mary has made the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, Katie, could you please call the roll?
Dr. Lakuta?
Yes.
Dr. Bush?
Yes.
Ms. Bijak?
Yes.
Ms. Garrison?
Yes.
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, motion carries 6-0. Thank you, Zane. Thank you, Andy. All right. Those are our action items, so we're moving on to D, discussion items. Committee reports, vision steering. Heather.
Yes, our next visioning meeting is on the 24th of this month, right before the board meeting.
Okay, thank you. Policy, Mary.
Our next policy meeting is next week, the March 13th at 5:30 here.
Isn't that this week?
This week.
Daylight savings.
Whatever. Exactly.
All right. Moving on to information items. So that is visioning and strategic planning, teaching and learning update, and superintendent's report. So that is Dr. Bergstrom.
Thank you. We've been doing an awful lot of visioning and strategic planning in our discussion of our readiness for learning framework, because we know how much it supports not only the board's priorities, but also the goals of the district. And so when you take a look at the framework, and people who've been coming to the engagement sessions will certainly know this, as does the board, but for anybody who's listening, I want them to note that each of these components contributes to all of us, students in particular, being ready for learning. But the orange components that are at the top of the framework are particularly important, because the focused and engaged learning has led us to do investigation regarding the best practice related to cell phones and reducing distractions in the classroom. And so there will be a proposal coming to the policy committee later this week related to that. We've had engagement sessions to collect feedback on the proposal, as well as a feedback form on our website that allows people to read over the proposal and send in their feedback. And we are consistently receiving feedback, and we are reading it every day. As are we, the feedback we're getting regarding the other orange slice, which is high quality collaborative teaching. Because we have been talking with our community, the people who are able to come to the engagement sessions, and the people who are sending in feedback about their proposal to start school 1 hour later on Mondays for our students, so that our teachers would come in at the regular time and have time where they could all be together, as opposed to some of them being there but others being busy meeting the very important needs of students, but actually all of the professionals being able to be together to analyze student work, to make instructional decisions that will change in a positive way the learning experiences of our kids. So we've been talking about how to make that happen in these information and learning sessions. We've had 3 of them. They have been fairly well attended considering how busy everybody's lives are. However, we do know how difficult it is to come to school and give feedback. So all of this information is on our website. In addition, there are feedback forms on the website where you can mail it in and it comes directly to us. The board reads it, as do all of us on the administrative team. The feedback from the community is really critical to us. We also know how important our partnership in general is with the community, particularly when we're talking about minimizing the distractions within classrooms, because that's when we're talking about cell phones. And how can we help our families? How can we all work together collaboratively to create the best situations possible for our students? And Screenagers is an updated version of a really important movie that helps families understand really what's within their locus of control related to cell phones and how their students are using them. So we really encourage people to come. It's this Wednesday, March 12th, 6 o'clock in the Performing Arts Center. Really, I think students should come too. So we are encouraging, actually, there was something over Panther Vision. I believe there's going to be a drawing of gift cards for students who attend. So that's kind of exciting if any of you are out there listening. Ryan, well, no. Well, there are gift cards available. You never know. And then also through our partnership with Oregon Cares, if we reach a minimum attendance, they are doing a drawing of attendees, and then the people who have attended are able to donate the money they win in the drawing to their organization. So if you have a boosters club or an athletic club, this is an opportunity to come learn a lot and potentially even give some money back to your organization through a donation from Oregon Cares. And now the superintendent's report. And this is always, for me, the most fun. So now we get to 4K registration. It is now open. So if you have a child who will be 4 years old on or before September 1st, 2025, they are eligible for the 4K community-based programming this upcoming school year. So visit our website, which is just the regular OregonSD.org/enroll4K. And you may have noticed on our social media site, we took a moment to recognize our social emotional learning coaches, because today is actually Social Emotional Learning Day. So we wanted to give them a special thanks to two really fabulous educators who do so much for our students and so much for our staff in their collaborative approach to working with our students and building their social emotional learning skills. We appreciate everything they do to build these lifelong skills in our students, like leadership, self-awareness, self-management, decision-making, emotional regulation. We're really proud to have both Ms. Delzer and Ms. Kretschmann as members of our team. And then it was also School Social Worker Week. And for those of you who have been here a while, you might have remembered when the screen was empty or when the screen had one person. And really thanks to the forethought of the board, we now have 5 social workers to meet the needs of our families. And we're really excited to celebrate them. They're a phenomenal group of people. They do really amazing things for our kids and our families every day, and we really appreciate them and the work they do. School nutrition team, they had a special chili day. So this is always fun. They served homemade chili, used locally sourced beef, and thanks to our team for working hard on this each and every day to prepare healthy meals for our students. And you can find out more about our school nutrition program on our website also, including our breakfast and our lunch menus. And then Netherwood students learned about, this is Miss Rudy's class, and they learned about Myrtle the turtle. You can see Miss Konopacki, our naturalist, sitting there with them. And they learn about the physical and behavioral adaptations that turtles have. So we really love this kind of relevant and engaging learning experience. And then speaking of, our Forest Edge kindergartners, better go back. They got to learn about the dental health profession. So Dr. Paz, who's a parent of one of our students, and Dr. Michaela recently visited kindergarten classes at Forest Edge to talk about dental health. They read a story, played a game, and talked about how to keep your teeth healthy. So thank you for joining us and sharing those important tips. And then a special visitor to our district office spoke about this. Here we go. Brooklyn's Freaky Frog Festival. So our third graders at Brooklyn Elementary hopped into action on Friday, hosting their Freaky Frog Festival. So after researching and compiling their knowledge into a Freaky Frog book and a Freaky Frog card, they became true experts, and they proudly shared their findings with first graders and fourth graders, as well as their fellow third graders and their teachers. So spreading their amphibian expertise throughout the school. Way to go, third graders, and keep up the amazing learning. Brooklyn and Netherwood, they took a trip. Our second graders took a trip to Anderson Park. The students learned about how sap is harvested from maple trees and made into maple syrup. And they had a tour of the trails. And they learned about some creatures living in the area. So thanks to our second grade team and to Friends of Anderson Park for making this special trip happen. And then all of these amazing visitors, for all of the times that our community come into our schools to enhance a learning experience, it's really pretty special. And this is another example. Band students at Rome Corners welcomed a very special guest conductor to class, Mr. Corey Pompey, Associate Director of Bands at UW-Madison and Director of the Badger Band, the University of Wisconsin Marching Band. He came and worked with our students on musical pieces, shared experiences that led to his career path, and autographed band folders. That's pretty cool. We learned that one of Dr. Pompey's favorite songs is, of course, On Wisconsin. So thanks to Mr. Bauer and Miss Brown for coordinating this fun and engaging experience for our musicians. And there is a way to learn more about the work of Dr. Pompey also by going to music.wisc.edu/faculty/Corey-Pompey. And then another really great example of this. Our Oregon Middle School 8th grade choir and orchestra classes recently welcomed music therapist Jill Miller-Keesaw, who gave a special presentation on music therapy. So Ms. Miller-Keesaw is a board-certified music therapist with 29 years of experience working across diverse settings, including hospitals, universities, clinics, schools, and private homes. And she holds a bachelor's degree in music therapy from UW-Madison Oshkosh and has advanced certifications and training in neurologic music therapy, guided imagery in music, and hospice care. So music therapy is a growing field and may be appealing to students who have interests in music, medicine, and therapy. So thanks to Ms. Ratman and Ms. Black for offering this amazing learning opportunity. And then our Prairie View kiddos, look how happy they went. They had a special trip to the state capitol. They learned about Wisconsin history and the legislative process, and thanks to our fourth grade educators for making this trip possible. And then we had our math competition. So congratulations to our Oregon School District students who participated in the Math 24 competition at UW-Madison. So a special shout out to those who placed: Dylan in second place, Tommy in third, Henry in fourth, Caleb in fourth, Fletcher in sixth. We're super proud of you. A huge thank you to the Oregon high school students who helped out with the event. You're great role models. Thank you. Were either of you there? Were you? Thank you, Ryan. And then another youth apprenticeship spotlight. So we have two spotlights tonight, and the first is Audrey. She's working as certified nursing assistant at a new Glarus home. Boy, that's a commute. Courses that have led to this capstone experience include Intro to Medical Occupations, Medical Terminology, Anatomy and Physiology, Biotechnology 1 and 2, Psychology, Chemistry, and Biology. So Audrey also has her CNA. Now, here's our second person. This is Jacob. And he's working as a teller at one community bank. And then courses that have led to this capstone experience include Accounting 1 and Business, Economics, and Marketing. Jacob is also part of the Business Professionals of America at Madison College. And now is the time for our sophomores and our juniors who are interested to start thinking about these options. So students should contact their school counselor and Ms. D'Amelio, our school to career coordinator, to discuss this and how to learn more about what the opportunities are. I really appreciate having these spotlights because it's so important for students to know what opportunities are out there for them. Speaking of opportunities, congratulations to Oregon High School student and FFA member Ashley Olson. She was recently presented the Lewis M. Sassman Award by Gerald Swash, president of the Kiwanis Club of Downtown Madison, and they are joined by Abe Aberly, chair of the Kiwanis Club's Agricultural, Conservation, and Environmental Committee. The Sassman Award is given annually to an outstanding student from each of the FFA chapters at Dane County High Schools. Mr. Sassman was the state supervisor for vocational education for 36 years and a member of the Kiwanis Club of Downtown Madison for over 40. So Ashley, we're really proud of you. And then of course, this was the podcast that we did with Little Mermaid, and I'm not at all surprised that it broke records for attendance. It was an absolutely fabulous production. So that was a real joy.
All right, thank you very much. Lots going on. Okay, F closing, future agenda. Our next meeting is on the 24th, so 2 weeks from tonight. We potentially will have things coming from policy. We'll see how that goes. So now we will move to checkout. So does anyone have anything for checkout? This side of the room? Go ahead, Leslie.
So I just wanted to say Dr. Pompey also went to FES, and my twins could not stop talking about how amazing that was, how excited they were to meet Dr. Pompey, and they just went on and on. I heard it for days. So that's awesome. And then two, the music therapist at OMS, I was able to attend that, and that was just phenomenal. This is the whole psychology meets music. And I was so excited. I was super excited, but sitting in the room full of the middle schoolers that were all in band, orchestra, and choir, and hearing their excitement and how involved they got in that presentation, it was just great. It was really, really great. So I was really happy that I was invited to that.
Awesome. Anyone else on this side? This side? Go ahead, Heather.
I'm excited to attend Screenagers on Wednesday night. I am bringing my kids. My oldest son does not want me to go because he is nervous that it will further convince me about the technology issues with younger kids, and he is reluctantly going, but we are all going to be there, and I'm really looking forward to that. So that's one thing. And then the other thing, I was so glad the math competition made these amazing highlights. One of the students is on the Oregon Community Swim Club team, and we had a meet this weekend and ate dinner at Olive Garden. And for most of the meal, we were playing 24, which I had never heard of. So this student clearly was exceptional at it and blew my mind. But it's a fun little game that you can play for math skills. So just wanted to share that.
Awesome. All right, the board will now go into executive session. And so we'll take about a 2 or 3 minute break, and then we will see everyone later. Thank you.
This exclusive OCA Media broadcast